I welcome you to my channel. Subscribe and listen to my new stories every day. The morning had a peculiar start, with the sky a wash of grays, almost as if it too had lost something dear. I rummaged through my closet, seeking comfort in my favorite shirt, an exclusive piece from Julien de Vivier's rare autumn collection. The realization hit hard when I found it missing. That shirt wasn't just fabric, it was a memory, a splurge I allowed myself on my last solo trip to Paris. It represented a taste of freedom, a whisper of adventure. Frustrated, I headed to the kitchen, where the familiar hum of the coffee maker offered some solace. My wife, Lisa, was already there, her gaze locked on her phone. "Morning," she muttered without looking up. I grunted a reply, my mind still on the missing shirt. I tried to shake off the irritation as I sat down with my laptop to scroll through social media, hoping to catch up on the news and perhaps distract myself. But the distraction that found me was anything but welcome. There, on my feed, was a picture that made my heart stop, a photo of Lisa, smiling brighter than I had seen in months, her arms around a man I had never seen before. And there it was, the punch to the gut, he was wearing my shirt. My rare, expensive, missing shirt. The image burned in my mind, the implications swirling like a dark cloud. I stood abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. "Lisa," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "who's this?" I turned the laptop to face her. Her eyes widened as she glanced from the screen to me, the color draining from her face. "Tom, it's not what it looks like. He's just a friend. A friend wearing my missing shirt." I cut her off, the pieces slotting together in the most painful way. She started to reply, but the words died in her throat. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only by the ticking of the kitchen clock and my rapidly beating heart. The following days were a blur of cold silences and whispered phone calls. I watched, waited, and collected evidence. My once beloved wife's infidelity became clear as the lies piled up. The trust we had built over years shattered in mere days, each truth revealing more of her betrayal. Determined to confront this head-on, I arranged a meeting with her so-called friend. "Why my shirt?" was the first question I threw at him as we sat across from each other in a dimly lit cafe. He faltered, his eyes darting away. "It was a mistake. I didn't realize." "A mistake?" I scoffed, my hands clenched in tight fists. Wearing my shirt, hugging my wife. What else was a mistake? He didn't have an answer, and I didn't need one. My mind was made up. The fabric of our marriage was torn, and no stitch could mend it now. I planned meticulously, ensuring the divorce would leave no room for her deceit to ever reach me again. I contacted the best lawyer, presented my evidence, and watched as the empire of lies crumbled. Lisa's face, once dear to me, became nothing but a canvas of betrayal. The day the divorce was finalized, I walked out of the courthouse with a heavy heart but a clear conscience. I had lost a wife but regained my dignity. Our paths, like severed threads, were never to cross again. As I walked into the crisp evening, the air felt different, cleaner. The chapter of Lisa was closed, but the pages of my life were still open, waiting for new stories to be written. The days following the divorce were a mosaic of tumultuous emotions and newfound resolutions. The apartment felt larger, the silence more profound without Lisa's presence. As I paced the empty spaces, a plan began to crystallize, fueled by a relentless desire for retribution. It wasn't enough to simply sever ties, I needed to ensure that the betrayal she orchestrated would never be forgotten. I started by changing the locks. While the locksmith worked, drilling and replacing, my phone buzzed incessantly, texts from Lisa, each more pleading than the last. "Tom, we need to talk," one read. "Please, let's handle this like adults," said another. I ignored them all, the buzzing a mere background to my thoughts. With the house secured, my next step was the social sphere. I had gathered substantial evidence of Lisa's infidelity, photos, texts, and even receipts. It was time to use them. Sitting at my desk, I drafted an email, not just to her, but to all our mutual friends and her family. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, each word calculated to expose but not to slander. I am writing to inform you of the reason behind my recent divorce from Lisa, the email began. I believe it is important to share the truth, not to spread malice but to prevent future misunderstandings. Attached were the undeniable proofs of her betrayal. I hit send before I could hesitate, the digital missile launched irrevocably into the ether. Within hours, the reactions poured in. Phone calls, messages, some shocked, others sympathetic, a few condemning. Lisa's brother called me, his voice strained. "Tom, was this necessary? To air dirty laundry like this? Was it necessary for her to cheat?" I retorted, my voice cold, devoid of the warmth we once shared. "I'm just setting the record straight." As night fell, my phone rang again. This time, it was Lisa. Her voice came through the speaker, cracked and desperate. "You didn't have to do this, Tom. Why humiliate me like this? Like you humiliated me?" I snapped back. "Wearing my shirt, in public, with him? You made a fool of me." There was a pause, a soft sob from the other end. "I'm sorry, Tom. I never wanted to hurt you like this." "Sorry doesn't change what happened, Lisa," I said, ending the call with a decisive click. The next morning, I woke to a quiet house and a clear agenda. If Lisa had used emotional tactics, I would use legal and financial ones. I contacted her employer, presenting myself as a concerned former spouse, hinting at Lisa's unstable behavior without outright accusing her of misconduct. It was a delicate move, one that could sway her professional standing. I also reached out to the man she had cheated with, sending a firm yet formal text. "I hope she's worth it," I wrote. "Because you're both going to need each other." Each action was a cut, a way to sever the ties that bound us, ensuring that the memories of betrayal would not fade into quiet resentment. Instead, they burned bright, a beacon of my refusal to be diminished. As I sat in the growing light of dawn, my phone silent for the first time in days, I realized this was just the beginning. Retribution was a path I had chosen, and there was no turning back now. The consequences of these actions would unfold, but I was ready to face them, fortified by the righteousness of my cause. The fallout from my revelations began to manifest in ways both expected and unforeseen. Lisa's social standing suffered as friends and family grappled with the stark realities laid bare by my email. Meanwhile, I fortified my own defenses, both emotionally and legally, preparing for any backlash that might come my way. A week had passed since the email when I decided to confront Lisa face to face, seeking a closure that electronic communication couldn't provide. I drove to the cafe where we first met, a place once filled with laughter and promises, now just a backdrop for the final act of our dissolution. Lisa was already there, sitting alone at a corner table, her posture defeated. As I approached, her eyes lifted, wary and red-rimmed. "Tom," she started, her voice trembling, "I didn't think you'd actually come." "I had to see you, one last time," I replied, my tone firmer than I felt. We sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unsaid words. "Why did you send those emails?" "To everyone?" she asked, her hands wrapped around her coffee mug for comfort. "Because everyone deserved to know the truth, Lisa. You made a fool of me, and I won't let that pass quietly," I said, the bitterness evident in my voice. Lisa sighed, her shoulders slumping. "I know I made mistakes, terrible ones. But ruining my reputation, my relationships, was that necessary?" "Necessary? Maybe not. Satisfying?" "Definitely," I admitted. The confession felt raw, but honest. "You destroyed the trust one had in you, Lisa." This was my response. We continued to talk, the conversation a mix of heated accusations and pained admissions. It was clear that while the love was gone, the hurt lingered, stubborn and sharp. As we parted ways, Lisa's last words echoed in my ears. I hope this was worth it, Tom. I truly do. Her voice cracked, laden with regret. Returning home, I found an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Lisa's employer, formally requesting that I refrain from further contact or insinuations regarding Lisa's personal life. The letter was polite but firm, a clear indication that my actions were having wider repercussions than I anticipated. That night, I lay awake, pondering the path of retribution I had chosen. My efforts to expose and isolate Lisa had succeeded, but at what cost? The satisfaction I expected felt hollow, replaced by a gnawing sense of unease about the future. The next morning, I received a call from an unknown number. On the other end was the voice of Lisa's lover, the man from the photo. "We need to talk, Tom." "Face to face," he said, his tone serious. "About what?" I demanded, my interest piqued despite my initial hesitation. "About everything that's happened." "There's more to this story than you know," he replied cryptically. Curiosity overcame my resentment, and we agreed to meet. As I prepared for this unexpected encounter, I couldn't help but feel that this chapter of my life was far from over. The intrigue deepened, pulling me further into a web of consequences I had spun with my own hands. The meeting place was a secluded park on the outskirts of town, away from prying eyes and overheard conversations. As I approached the designated bench, the man from the photo, Lisa's lover, whose name I'd learned was Mark, stood up. His face was tense, his eyes wary as he scanned the area before focusing on me. "Tom, thanks for coming," Mark said, his voice low. "I'm only here to find out what you think could possibly justify your actions," I replied sharply, my hands clenched at my sides. Mark nodded, taking a deep breath. "There's something you need to know about Lisa and me. It wasn't just an affair. Lisa was planning to leave you, but she wanted to secure her finances first. She used me as much as she used you." I stared at him, processing his words. "Are you telling me this to make yourself look better? Because it's not working." "No," he shook his head. "I'm telling you because she's planning the same with someone else now. I found out too late, but you need to know who you were really married to." The revelation stung, yet it also clarified the depth of Lisa's deception. It wasn't just emotional betrayal, it was a calculated betrayal at every level. My heart raced with a mix of anger and vindication. This was the ammunition I needed to end this once and for all. "Where is she now?" I demanded. "At her sister's house. She's moving on, and I think she's targeting her sister's husband next," Mark confessed, his expression grim. I took a moment to let the information sink in, then made my decision. "Thank you, Mark. You've just handed me the final piece." Leaving Mark behind, I drove straight to Lisa's sister's house. As I pulled up, I could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Without hesitation, I marched to the front door and rang the bell. Lisa opened the door, surprise etching her face. "Tom. What are you doing here?" "I know everything, Lisa. And soon, everyone else will too," I said, my voice cold and steady. Before she could respond, I raised my voice so those inside could hear. "She's planning to do to you what she did to me," I called out, directing my words to her sister who appeared at the hallway. Lisa turned pale, her eyes darting between me and her sister. "Tom, please, let's talk about this." "No more talking. You're a user, Lisa, and everyone is going to see that," I interrupted her. I took out my phone and dialed the local news station. I had contacted a reporter there earlier, someone who specialized in investigative stories about social and personal deceit. "I have a story for you," I told the reporter as Lisa and her sister listened in horror. "It's about a serial betrayer who uses love as a weapon." The next hours were a blur of interviews and confessions. Lisa's facade crumbled publicly as the true extent of her manipulations became headline news. In the end, Lisa was left with nothing. Her social reputation was destroyed, her family turned their backs on her, and legally, she was entangled in several lawsuits concerning her schemes. As I walked away from the chaos I had ensured, I felt a harsh peace settling over me. The betrayal had cut deep, but my retribution had cut deeper. Lisa and I, linked once by vows, were now parting forever on waves of mutual disdain and the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. Walking back to my car, I knew this chapter of my life was closed. I had exposed the truth, protected others from future deceit, and now, it was time to rebuild, a future without lies, without Lisa, and without looking back.